This architectural landmark of Kyiv was built by the order of the Russian Empress Elizabeth, the daughter of Peter I. The project was designed by Italian architect Bartolomeo Rastelli. Her secret husband, Oleksiy Razumovsky, was to live here with Elizabeth, a descendant of the ancient Cossack family of Rozum. Mariinskyi Palace. From imperial residence to the ceremonial place of the President of Ukraine. This medal is dedicated to the Mariinskyi Palace as a historical and architectural monument of the 17th and 19th centuries. The National Bank of Ukraine produces souvenirs that symbolize statehood and contain information about significant events, traditions, culture, sports and nature. This is the history of Ukraine engraved in metal for centuries to come. And here the history of Ukraine is engraved in the facades, staircases, halls, and every detail. Until the 20th century, this palace was called the Tsar's Palace, but today it is known as the Mariinskyi Palace. It has seen its heyday and decline, fires, revolutions, and numerous reconstructions. Little remains of its authentic appearance, but still it has been preserved and hosts the most prominent people of our time. The history of the palace dates back to the 18th century when the daughter of Peter I came to Kyiv. She liked the area between the Majestic fortress and the old town so much that she decided to build a summer residence here. For herself and her favorite Oleksiy Razumovsky, whom she secretly married. According to the most common version, the Baroque palace was designed by Francesco Bartolomeo Rastelli, a very famous architect of the 18th century. Architect Ivan Michurin became the construction foreman. He worked with a group of Kyiv architects. The foundation was laid in 1748 and the palace was completed in 1755. It consisted of a central two-story building and two one-story wings on either side. Catherine II was the first member of the imperial family to come here. Razumovsky also was in this group. So there he saw his unfulfilled dream, which he never got. In June 1784, Empress Catherine wrote to the Governor-General of Left Bank Ukraine, Pyotr Rumyantsev, and ordered him to prepare for her visit. At that time, Rumyantsev-Zadunaysky was the master of the Mariinskyi Palace. Here in Kyiv, Catherine did not change her habits and enjoyed herself from night to day. During the day, she would hold lavish receptions, and as soon as it got dark, the palace would be buzzing with balls, masquerades and performances, with the participation of students of the academy and not only. And the year 1812, when Napoleon launched his campaign against the Russian Empire, was already around the corner. There is a version that during the war with Napoleon, the local cellars were used to hold captive Saxons who suffered from an unknown plague. The palace fell into despair as a barracks and hospital. Governor-General Nikolai Raevsky, who settled here in 1813, decided to restore it. But his so-called restoration ended in a fire that burned down the main building to the stone ground floor. Fortunately, the stone wings on either side survived. In 1830, the surviving part of the palace became a prison for 99 people. However, not for long. The prison soon gave way to the Mineral Water Joint Stock Company. The outbuildings were used for hotels, and the renovated central building was used for bars and as a kurzal. The resort season lasted from May 10th to September 1st. The company rented out the garden around it, now Mariinsky Park, to Kyiv residents for greenhouses. In 1868, Emperor Alexander II, the one who abolished serfdom in the Russian Empire, sent his wife Maria to Kyiv. According to one of the versions, it was in her honor that the palace was named Mariinsky. The contract with the Mineral Water Company was terminated and an order was issued for the immediate restoration of the palace. The palace was equipped with all possible technical advancements: steam heating, ventilation, water and electricity supply. Until 1917, Mariinsky was the residence of the Russian imperial family during their visits to Kyiv. The mother of Nicholas II, Empress Maria Feodorovna, even lived here for 2 years. From here, hospitals, sanitary trains, and sanatoriums were organized. Thanks to her, the first infirmary with an X-ray room was opened in Kyiv. It was in the Mariinskyi Palace that she learned that the empire had fallen and her son Nicholas II had abdicated. Relatives would forcibly take her from Kyiv to the Crimea, and from there she would end up in Denmark, where she had lived for the rest of her life. The year 1917, the end of the Romanov Empire. The Romanovs scattered, and the palace became a nobody's house. With the permission of the provisional government, it became subordinate to the city authorities. In the wake of democratization, in the wake of freedom, the city authorities gave all organizations and political parties premises here. Until the Third Ukrainian Republic in Warsaw in November 1917, this palace was the center of state political and social life in Kyiv and perhaps the whole of Ukraine. On October 29th, soldiers broke in and arrested members of the Revolutionary Committee and the leadership of the Kyiv Committee of the Russian Social Democratic Workers' Party. Political power passed to the Bolsheviks. The most difficult times for the Mariinskyi Palace began on January 26, 1918. It was the day when Mikhail Muravyov, the commander of the Red Army forces, captured Kyiv during the Soviet-Ukrainian War. He issued an order to ruthlessly destroy all officers, monarchists, and enemies of the Russian Revolution, and Ukrainians in general. Muravyov was a fierce enemy of Ukrainization. The palace became a place of execution. People were shot right on the square in front of it. According to the Ukrainian Red Cross, the total number of victims reached 5,000. A century later, the scenario will repeat itself. The beautiful park will once again become a torture chamber, and blood will be shed here for independence. Mariinsky Park became famous in the 21st century for such a unique phenomena in terms of its cruelty as the Anti-Maidan, an organization created by the pro-Kremlin authorities of ex-President Yanukovych. The year is 1918. The government, as well as the palace, changes with cinematic speed. Eventually, when the Ukrainian Hetmanate state briefly replaced the Ukrainian People's Republic and Hetman Pavlo Skoropadsky rose to power, he refused to live in the Mariinsky Palace. There still was a fresh mass grave of officers shot by the Bolsheviks. Since 1919, the Council of People's Commissars of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic has been operating within these walls. Later, it housed the headquarters of the military district, the Technical School of Land Management, the Permanent Industrial Exhibition, and the Agricultural Museum. In 1934, the Parliament of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic met in this place. In 1941, the Taras Shevchenko Museum was opened. However, with the beginning of the German occupation of Ukraine, the exhibition was closed and most of the exhibits were taken to Russia. During the 2 years of German occupation, the German Imperial Radio Office worked in the palace. In 1943, during the Soviet bombing of Kyiv, a landmine bomb destroyed part of the building. Reconstruction began immediately after the war. The work was supervised by the famous Ukrainian architect Pavlo Alyoshin. He had archival drawings and a document stating that the building was intended for ceremonial government receptions. In the early 1980s, the Mariinsky again underwent a large-scale reconstruction. In anticipation of the visit of Leonid Brezhnev, General Secretary of the USSR Central Committee. It was then that the virtuoso parquetry of 11 tree species was laid out, a beauty that delights visitors of the highest rank. To avoid close attention to the landmark, Kyiv residents and tourists have been officially told for decades that this site is closed to the public. The reason was its alleged emergency condition and reconstruction. This went on until, during a meeting between Gorbachev and French President François Mitterrand, the audience saw the marble staircase, the main white hall for official receptions, and the crimson and green drawing rooms. Of course, not much has survived from the original palace after 250 years of trials and tribulations. But it is there. For example, fragments of wall paintings by Italian artist Camille Aliaudi on a medallion above the fireplace. After Ukraine regained its independence, the first president, Leonid Kravchuk, made the Mariinskyi Palace his residence for protocol events. But the building was in need of repair again. During the previous renovation in the 80s, the foundation and utilities had not been given due attention. So in 2003, a new large-scale restoration was next in line, which lasted 14 years. Today, as in the past, the Mariinskyi Palace hosts meetings of official delegations at the highest level. Despite the fact that Ukraine is in full-scale war with Russia, leaders of friendly countries are not afraid to visit its capital. The arrival of US President Joe Biden in February 2023 was a historic event. It was his first visit to Kyiv as president and the first visit by a US leader since 2008. The United States will support Ukraine for as long as it takes, was his message to the world. The unannounced visit of the presidents of Poland and Lithuania was symbolic too. Andrzej Duda and Gitanas Nausėda arrived in the capital of Ukraine right on its Constitution Day. We deeply believe that the security of Ukraine is all our security. Those are our common interests that NATO has to be as dense as possible here, and that Ukraine in the nearest future becomes a member of the alliance. All these receptions of official delegations take place in the White Hall of the Mariinskyi Palace, the main, central one. From now on the initiative of President Volodymyr Zelensky, it is called the White Hall of Heroes of Ukraine. In 1918, during the Soviet-Ukrainian War, thousands of Ukrainians were executed here. And now it is used to honor those who have been awarded the title of Hero of Ukraine.